Hello, and welcome to Brendanz Dystopia. If you've been paying attention to my channel, you may have noticed that my video on subjective morality got taken down. And that's because that I came to disagree with it. But, then, surprisingly, I came to start to agree with subjective morality. And I wanted to share my reflections on this. Now, objective morality is the idea that morality is based on absolutes, that if logically worked out, all things are either moral or immoral, and that it doesn't differ from person to person, whereas subjective morality is the idea that morality can be different based off of the preferences of different people. Now, originally, when I embraced subjective morality, it was based off of a fear of the uncomfortable implications of utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is the idea that morality is based off of the pain and the pleasure of all the people that you meet. And that whatever causes the most pleasure is moral, and whatever causes pain is immoral. Of course, morality has gone under many different definitions under the past, but old definitions such as social values, cultural norms, have a problem, and that is that perfectly good things get outlawed and demonized as bad. For example, homosexuality. Something that, when you think about it, doesn't hurt people, but some people consider it gross. Thus, they deem it immoral. Whereas sometimes certain bad things, like killing anyone who doesn't follow your religion, is celebrated as good. The problem with utilitarianism is that it can have some very uncomfortable implications. For example, if you see a train about to hit towards 5 people, would it be right to change the direction of the train to make it only hit 1 person instead of 5? This might not be uncomfortable for some people, but when making big forms of laws that involve millions of people, where you sacrifice many people for the good of an even greater amount of people, that's when it starts to get more uncomfortable. For example, Thanos' plan to wipe out half of the universe, he believes it can end the conflicts, the deaths of people caused by wars and struggles over resources. And originally I thought that he was right. I mean, of course, put under scrutiny, there are problems with this plan, where it would not end up working out. But when I say this, it's not out of fear. Observing his plan, there are really problems. And at first, I just embraced that idea without fear, but decided that if I were ever given the choice whether or not to wipe out half the universe, whether or not that's a moral or immoral decision, I would not do it. So, Eventually, I looked at the idea of subjective morality with a more critical eye. When people argue whether things are moral or immoral, they often use arguments. Some arguments are more rational than others. Thus, I decided morality cannot be subjective. I decided that despite the bizarre decisions that the philosophy of utilitarianism can lead you to believe, that it was the correct system. You shouldn't outright reject utilitarianism. Even if some of its decisions make you uncomfortable. You know, the idea that morality should be based off of what hurts or helps other people is a good one. Yet I've seen people outright reject this notion. But then I realized that just as how people have preferences for things that are subjective, that things that cause pain and things that cause pleasure can be subjective as well. So I revisited the idea of subjective morality with a less fearful, more objective eye, this time not bound up by my emotions. I realized that certain things really depend on the preferences of people rather than cold hard logic. Preferences are emotional. Preferences can even be things you physically want. And then I realized there may be several problems. One, maybe preferences are not subjective at all. Maybe preferences can be calculated with logic. One person I watched videos from who said he believed in subjective morality said that there may be an objective code of morality, but we cannot perfectly calculate it. And to that I thought, yes, well, we should calculate it as best as we can. Then I thought, if people all have different preferences, shouldn't we just find a way to make a society that respects the preferences of different people, rather than try to put our own preferences onto others? Perhaps the goal is to figure out what are the preferences of the majority of the population and try to reflect that. Now, someone who believes in subjective morality may ask the question, if morality is objective, why do different people disagree on what is and isn't immoral? My answer to that would be basically that people have differing preferences over what they want to believe in, and a lot of times people's ideas for what is good or bad are wrong. Now, some people have more logic-based morality than others. That's not to say that my way is always correct or objective. No person's way is completely objective, because no human being is perfect. I decided that there must be things that not all preferences are just automatically better than other preferences when it comes to morality. Not all values are objectively better than others. It depends on the person, and a person's values are determined by their culture and by their DNA. And by the current way that their brain is working, I decided that a lot of what creates conflicts over morality is an inability to allow society to fall under preferences you consider incorrect, or the fact that when some people's preferences are met, that others are ostracized. Sometimes large amounts of the population. Sometimes value judgments are really logic judgments on what hurts or harms the most people, and are really more objective than you think. Obviously, that morality is not completely subjective. We need to use logic. Sometimes one person's logic does trump another person's logic. Sometimes you're picking between two different values, and you don't know which one is better in the long run. Sometimes, even though one seems better in the long run, and is better in the long run, that you can't bear to lose one thing over the other. But what are these values? These values can be security, people trusting one another. Sometimes it can be freedom. Sometimes it is morality based off of something you believe, and morality that involves a cold logic of sacrificing things in order to get the thing that you want. Sometimes it's a decision whether or not to allow ideas to be freely expressed, or whether it is sacrificing that right in order to destroy ideas that are dangerous for the whole of society. It can be a cultural struggle of what a culture wants to decide is better for their lives. The idea of morality is not an objective one either. There are subjective reasons to believe in morality. The fact that we love other people and want to see their well-being. But sometimes life is based off of an idea of selfishness at its root, achieving your own needs. There's utilitarianism, trying to find the good of all people, and ego-invested decisions, trying to find the best good for yourself. These are subjective. And the best thing to do is to try to combine both in the most optimal way. But we can't always do that. Obviously, we cannot always say that morality is objective or subjective. Sometimes it needs to be objective. Sometimes we can't just say, oh, murdering people, that's just a subjective value. Or don't murder people, that's just a subjective value. Or rape is bad. So, while morality should most of the times be based off of logic, without your emotions interfering, a lot of times morality is a mixture of others' preferences and your own. If there's anything I've learned from this, it's that how little we actually know, how often we tend to not be able to comprehend the ideas of others, and how you should be careful not to stick to ideas out of fear. Try to rationally look at your own ideas, keep an open mind. This was Brendanz Dystopia. Make sure to subscribe and like my video and share it with a lot of people. Next week, or whenever I make the next video, I'm going to be talking about the disastrous presidency of Donald Trump. It's about fucking time. Have a good day.